All right, this is Andrew Phegley. I have from the Knightline Sports Network. That's my thing. I do a radio show for UCF. I do the original podcast for UCF, and I'm joining you guys tonight. So I'm digging it.
Well, welcome to the Ultimate Sports Network. I appreciate you being here. As we were talking off the air, it's something that is a passion, not a local, I grew up with this kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I did not grow up around UCF at all. I didn't know anything about UCF when I first, I didn't even know they existed. I didn't know the school existed. I knew about some players that had come from there, obviously, like Dante Culpepper and guys like that, but I didn't really know anything about the university. So in 2010, I went to a football game with my now wife. She said she was taking me to a football game, and I'm like, what, a high school game? No, UCF. And I was like, okay, well, I got on the campus. The campus is awesome, by the way. And I just fell in love with the entire thing. I think they were playing, Rice or something, not a big game or anything like that, but it was a great environment. They had a nice little stadium that just rocked when people, got excited, and I just loved it. So I was trying to figure out if I could find out more information about the team and stuff. And I kept looking online, and there was like a rival site, but that was really about it. Yeah. So I decided I was going to start a podcast. I played football at Kansas back in the day, 92 through 96. And so I know a lot about football. I have all kinds of music gear. You really can't see it behind me, but I've been a lifelong musician. So I had microphones and everything I needed to do a podcast, and do it very well and professionally, except for me, because I'm not a professional,
I understand that,
so, but I had all the gear, and so I got a buddy together and started this podcast in 2014. It's still going strong. I've had my moments where I wanted to quit, and now I have a radio show as well on, the big FM station here in Orlando. And I love UCF. I love everything that they're about. It's been an exciting ride, especially since, around 2013. It's obviously really picked up since then. So, yeah, it's exciting, and I love it and hate it all at the same time.
Well, there are a couple things in there that you made me think about. And for those who don't know, give everybody an idea of the conference that UCF is in, because I don't think people understand that. And then we'll get to the head coach, because that's another story entirely. So let's start with the conference.
Yeah. UCF is in the American Conference right now, which used to be the Big East, if you remember the Big East. The basketball schools left the Big East, and the football schools stayed, and they added a couple more, and they call it the American. And that's the conference we're in. We like to think that we're the better of the G5 conferences. I think we've been to more. We had an automatic bid in 2013. It was the last time that the Big East, which turned into the American, had an automatic bid. So UCF got that bid and went to Phoenix to play in the Fiesta Bowl, and we beat Baylor, which nobody ever thought that UCF would beat Baylor.
Right.
And we whooped them. It was a good game. We surprised them. We put them on their heels, and we never let off. So. It's not the SEC, it's not the ACC, it's not the Big Ten, but we have really good football. We have schools like Cincinnati, who did really well last year. We blazed the path for them to get to the point that they were last year. And they got to that point by wanting to compete with us, because UCF is the school and the team that has been doing that, for a while. And it's stepped up the entire conference because they wanted to be able to compete with UCF. So, and now we have to keep, catching back up to them, which is fine.
But one of the things people don't understand about the AAC, it's major metropolitan areas on the East Coast and in the Southwest as well.
Yeah.
So you've got Houston, Dallas, Cincinnati, the New England area with UConn. You've got a lot going on there. Well, but it's that area, right? So and bringing in everybody there that isn't Tuscaloosa, which is basically that's it. You're bringing in Orlando, you're bringing in all these places where, it's a nice mix of people and larger universities that people don't understand about.
Yeah, and we have, our rival. I hate even talking about them, but there's a team in Tampa as well. So there's 2 Florida teams, there's 2 Texas teams, there's an Oklahoma team in Tulsa, there's SMU and Houston in Texas, there's Cincinnati, there's Memphis, there's Navy's in our conference, East Carolina, Tulane. So those are the schools. So
and what some of these schools have done is, because they're looking at themselves, I believe, as a larger school, a larger player in the game, they're starting to bring in the bigger name coaches.
Right.
So give us a little idea of who's coaching the team and what that means to the program, or doesn't mean to the program, depending on what side.
Yeah, well, it's a big deal now. I can tell you that. The other thing that I have to mention, we talk about bigger schools. Bigger schools, as far as like football programs, that's one thing, but size of the actual school, UCF is the largest university in the United States, has the largest student population, over 70,000. So, there's a lot of revenue there. There's all kinds of other stuff. It's in beautiful Orlando, Florida. Anyway, besides that, I always have to clarify that, because people say bigger schools, and I'm like, there is none bigger. There's bigger football programs, obviously, but there's not bigger schools. So Gus Malzahn is our coach now. That was the coach at Auburn for a number of years. And he was the first person. I'm an insider. I mean, I've been doing this a while. I know a lot of people. And he was the first person, after Josh Heupel went to Tennessee with our AD that also went to Tennessee. He was the first name that got mentioned by anybody. And I was like, okay, Gus Malzahn. At first, the first thing was they mentioned him in the running to be the AD.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And then, the more and more it came along, and we may have wanted another guy. A lot of us wanted Jeff Lebby, that's at Mississippi State right now, with Lane Kiffin. Or Ole Miss, I'm sorry. A lot of us wanted him, but it worked out when Gus Malzahn comes calling to come and coach your team, and he's going to take like about a quarter of what he normally would charge to be your head coach, and he's excited about it. He wants to do it, wants to have a fresh start, and just, I mean, from what I hear, he was knocking on the door instantly. Like, as soon as he found out it was open, he's like, I want the job. I don't care what it is. I want the job. So we're happy to have him. I mean, anything that can put eyes on UCF is good in our opinion, in my opinion, especially good or bad. Anything that puts eyes on is good, because we want the world to know about UCF. People think that the fans are arrogant and all that stuff just because we're kind of loud on Twitter and all that stuff. We're passionate fans. That's one of the things. UCF, this football program that's only been around since, the early 70s. And they have one of the most passionate fan bases, I think, of any school out there, period. I would put them up against anybody. Maybe not in size, but in passion.
Well, I'm giggling because I'm an Ohio State guy and would say the same thing. Right. Passion, obnoxious, kind of the same thing for us, but we think it's a good thing. Let other people know. So I understand what you're talking about.
Right. And UCF has played Ohio State a couple times in the last few years. It's been a couple of years now, but yeah. So I think we did all right in one of those games.
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Now you're mentioning a fresh start. At quarterback, we are getting a fresh start. We no longer have I don't use the wrong word, the specter of Mackenzie Milton hanging over the program. He is now gone and left, and from what I can tell, in a very positive manner.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So that's a great. It seems like a great kid. And and had so many things
very well. I know his family. In fact, for our game, our American Championship game after he got hurt, our backup had to play, but his whole family was there in support. He wanted to come really bad. He couldn't make it, obviously, because it was just a week later.
Right.
But I made them T-shirts. I made the entire family T-shirts that said Ohana on them, and all that. And they're really good friends of mine. And I love Mackenzie. I had him on my show many times, even before he actually signed with UCF. Just, when he said he was committed, I had him on the show because he was an exciting kid. But yeah, it's all good. We wish him nothing but the best. We have a saying, once a night, always a night.
Right.
And we live by that, I think. There's not a lot of times where somebody will transfer or whatever that we won't be still supporting them. There's a lot of kids in the NFL now from UCF. There's a lot of kids in Canada playing in the CFL.
Right. Right.
And we support all of them no matter where they go. They don't go to our rivals, that none of them have transferred across the state over there.
Right.
That would be kind of weird, but I don't know if it would probably still happen, but I don't know.
Well, to me, the phrase that I heard is like, if my time is done, basically, I mean, it's now Dylan Gabriel's team.
Right.
And how many people do that?
That shows you the character of Mackenzie Milton. That shows you the character of not only him, but his family that brought him up, and his mom and his dad. They are all like that. And they'll be at our game and they'll be at his game. They've already told me they will be at both games. Ours is on Thursday. Theirs is on Saturday, I think. And they will be at the UCF games. They're looking forward to it. They're UCF people as well. They're in the family as well. They're part of us. And we don't let people go easy like that, So, and they don't want to, because they know how much UCF loves them. But yeah, it's Dylan Gabriel's thing right now. And Mackenzie was very gracious to move on someplace else and not try to step on what had happened with Dylan, which is a good friend of his anyway. They grew up in Hawaii. They both played on the same team. I mean, he was a freshman or whatever when Mackenzie was, I think, a senior or maybe a junior or whatever. So they played together. They were teammates. They were already brothers. And they say that they're like big brother and little brother. So Dylan Gabriel is an incredible quarterback. He doesn't have the feet that Mackenzie does, but he has an arm that is very comparable, or maybe even a little bit better, to be honest with you. So Mackenzie did it all with his feet, though. I mean, he threw great, obviously, too, but his biggest thing was that he could get out of situations. He could make plays happen with his feet like nobody else ever, I don't think.
And in a Gus Malzahn offense, it is more of I don't want to use the word structured offense, but it's more of a controlled, contained, what are you going to do, not have a big athlete back there. If you have one, great. But how can we get from point A to point B and get down the field? So a big arm helps. Now, with the rest of that offense, who shines right now? Who will shine during the season?
Well, there's a lot of new pieces, and that's the biggest thing that is kind of weird. There are a ton of new pieces. We lost some guys to the NFL last year. We got a lot of transfers in, so our guy that we thought was going to be we graduated 2 running backs, two guys that had run for over 1,000 yards in their career, or one of them was, I think, 2,400. Maybe the other one was 1,500 or something like that, maybe more. I don't remember their stats, to be honest with you. It's hard for me to keep up on everything, but they were both very, very, important for years at UCF. So the running backs, and then we have a couple of guys. I mean, one of the guys that I'm looking forward to, Isaiah Bowser. And you might be familiar with him. He played at Northwestern. Yep. He transferred here as a grad transfer. But I think he may be – we've gotten a little bit of a situation with running backs. We had a guy tear his ACL last week that was the projected starter possibly, or at least the number 2 guy. We had another guy just suddenly kind of quit the team for some reason, Bentavious Thompson, who was I mean, he was in line. He was a senior. It was his chance. He's been waiting, the entire time to be the starting running back, and all of a sudden he's not on the team. We don't know why. We haven't heard anything. UCF is usually pretty good about mellowing a story out if they don't want it to be told and keeping it within. They've been really good about that, which is good and bad all at the same time. But nothing has come out, and he hasn't said anything anyway. But Isaiah Bowser, I mean, this dude is 6'1", 225 pounds. He was played at Northwestern, was in that championship game, the Big Ten championship game at one point. And, when I think of the Big Ten, and I'm a football fan in general, I really pay attention to UCF and maybe a couple other programs. Kansas, not so good right now, but they'll be back. But when I think of the Big Ten, the first thing that comes to my mind are big running backs, like big time dudes. Like Wisconsin's always got a couple of them. All the teams in the Big Ten kind of have a good running back. This guy is kind of that prototypical guy. He did really well though in his freshman season or whatever there, and then got hurt. And then it took some time to come back and didn't play the last couple of years very much. So this is his fresh start as well. And he's worked himself into being the starting running back. I think he's a really big dude though. So I don't know if he's going to carry the entire load. I thought when he was coming in that he would probably be a fullback type situation kind of guy because of his size. And we have some smaller running backs. We have this guy, Johnny. I got to look at it now. That's what happens. I'm old and I forget things. So I
too much information. No, that's okay.
It is. It's a ton. Johnny Richardson is his name though. And he's a small guy. He's only 5'7", 170, but this dude has the cut ability. He has that stop where he can stop and like literally, very quickly and make somebody fall down right next to him, break their ankles kind of a thing. And he has blazingly fast feet. He's just small. You're not going to run that kind of guy up the middle, without having somebody in front of him. So I think Isaiah Bowser fits that. We'll see what kind of health he's in. We also, have some other transfers that are not in great shape. Mark Anthony Richards came from Auburn with Gus, and he was injured last year, so he's not quite healed 100%. So I thought he would probably be starting, but I don't know where he's at in the depth chart at this moment, just because he's still injured, I think. But
well, you mentioned something interesting about that. We're coming out of a season that was a little up and down, or a lot up and down. What am I talking about? So you have transfers that maybe wouldn't have transferred before, in and out. You have a defense that's not in flux, but you're bringing in Big Cat Bryant. I mean, how does that guy fit in? There's so many different things that I felt kind of silly putting together a preseason preview, because I don't think anyone's really going to know until we see them on the field. Yeah. But I'm obligated to do it, so I'm going to do it. But it's kind of odd, that in a lot of programs, there's so many things like, this guy here, and I don't know if he's hurt or if he's healthy or his sister moved him over here. There's no telling. So as we get into the defense, what kind of stability do we have there?
Well, our defensive line, I think, especially with the addition of Big Cat, is going to be insane. We've got a guy that didn't play last year. You got to remember there was those opt-outs as well.
Right.
And our defensive tackle that was a really good player of the year before opted out completely and didn't play a down last year. He's back. He's bigger, which is kind of amazing. Clea Davis is his name, number 22. Right. So we got him. We've got, other guys that have played quite a bit. We have a couple of guys on the other side of Big Cat, but Big Cat coming into the American from the SEC, where he was a captain on Auburn's team last year. He's a captain on our team this year, by the way, if you didn't see that. and for a transfer to come in and hadn't been there very long to be a captain, that tells us something about Big Cat Bryant. I just think that he's going to tear up our entire conference. I think that he is something that our conference hasn't seen before as an end rusher, as a guy that can, put pressure on the quarterback. And that's what we've been lacking for the last couple of years is, putting the pressure on the quarterback. And it's so important, especially in these hurry up offenses. Now you have to get that quarterback flustered back there. Otherwise they're going to tear you apart. Just like, the guy at Cincinnati, we couldn't put enough pressure on him last year.
Right.
He tore us apart. He just picked us apart. So, I think Big Cat's going to be huge. Another guy, I can't remember anybody's name tonight. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'll find it here in just a second.
Well, while you're doing that, the story that I heard, and I know one's a defensive end, one's a defensive tackle, but Big Cat will probably be the best player on the defensive line in the conference since Ed Oliver at Houston. Yeah. That's saying something. Ed Oliver was very disruptive. So
yes, yeah. I would Tremont Morris Brash is the other guy that I was going to talk about. But yes, I think Big Cat will be hopefully I cross my fingers, knock on wood. I hope that he's an Ed Oliver type guy. Ed Oliver was I think a little bit more interior than out most of the time, but I think he will be that impactful just because of where he came from, the competition that he's used to playing against, the size of guys that he's used to playing against. Now the American, we were talking about this last night on our show when we were recording our podcast. The American players have gotten larger in the last couple of years. When a lot of these teams were in like Conference USA and stuff, we didn't get the biggest offensive linemen that were out there. But now, the last few years, things have really changed. And you see tall wide receivers, you see tall corners, you see massive offensive lines and defensive lines that can go and play against SEC and can go and play against anybody out there. It wasn't like that before, though, but it is now. I just think Ed Oliver might have helped that out, to be honest with you, because he was the first 5-star player to ever sign it on a G5 conference team, and that was big for our conference. Even though it was at Houston, it was big for the entire conference.
I think what you've seen is that you've got two major players in the G5. You got from the season that the Sun Belt had last year was phenomenal. But you've got the AAC is going this way, where it's going to be bigger and badder, and the Sun Belt's like the Fun Belt. So you're seeing that divergence now, where you've got one conference, the Sun Belt was like, let's spread it out, let's see what happens, let's throw it all over the place, we're going to have fun. And you've got another conference like, if we're going to take on the big boys, Cincinnati is, I think, a prime example. We have to play like the big boys.
Right.
So I think that's where you're headed. And again, a Big Cat kind of goes in that direction.
Right. And Cincinnati, they're quickly becoming a rival, which isn't a natural rival for us, but they're one of the better teams in the American now. And we lost by 3 points last year. A missed field goal is what we lost by. So, and it was a shank. So we have a bad taste in our mouth. I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, I guess, or was it 3 years ago now? I don't remember, when game day came to UCF. Even that happening was a huge deal for the American and for UCF. And it was, I don't know if you saw it, but it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy.
It was nuts, yeah.
But we played Cincinnati on that game that night, and they couldn't even get a snap off for the first part of the first series because our stadium was so loud, and we beat them, obviously. But, we went to Cincinnati last year. Last year they came here and they beat us by the missed field goal. We beat them in Cincinnati before. We'll get them. We're going to Cincinnati this year. I think that we're gonna get them this year, and they're in a perfect spot for us to do that because we blazed the trail for them. Yep. So, And I have no problem saying that UCF blazed the trail for Cincinnati.
Well, you had that magic season that no one wanted to give. Two magic, right. That no one wanted to give you credit for.
Right.
And
now all of a sudden, Cincinnati gets credit.
Right. That's where I was going to go. Right. Exactly. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense at all. Well, and I'm going to show my age. I'm going to go back to a Don Nehlen team at West Virginia with Major Harris at quarterback. And I believe it was Major Harris that said, "We beat everybody we played. We don't make the schedule. What do you want us to do?"
And that was the thing. That was the deal with us on that season. And that's why we claimed a national championship.
Sure.
After beating Auburn, who beat Georgia and beat Alabama.
Right.
The two teams that I think that were, I don't know. They weren't both in the national championship. Alabama was, I know that. But they were in the SEC championship game, and Georgia won the SEC championship. So in that invitational playoff is what I call it, there was an Alabama team that didn't even win their conference.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, like, when UCF ran through their conference, their out of conference, everybody, then beat a team that we weren't supposed to beat, Auburn, in that Peach Bowl. We were never supposed to beat that. We can't play with the big boys.
You don't have a prayer. Why didn't show up? Right.
Yeah. But and then Auburn didn't take it seriously. They didn't want to be there. That's what everybody said. That's not true. So when you beat teams like that, that it just doesn't make any sense where you would leave somebody out. Now, hopefully they really do what they've been talking about and make this thing into 12 teams or 16 or whatever. And it'll give the American a chance again. It'll give teams like this. I mean, actually Cincinnati, I believe probably should have made it into it last year. Yeah. If it was an 8 team, they definitely would have. We would have made it.
And the thing about last year was you didn't have intersectional games.
Right.
So you didn't have anything for comparison. So basically all I could say was this team won their conference, that team won their conference. You can't say, well, Washington lost to Texas, who beat, New Hampshire, who lost to Ball State. I mean, it doesn't work that way. So when you have it that way, to me, it was cut and dry. If you go through your conference, if you won the Sun Belt and you didn't lose any games, you're in.
Carolina. A prime example as well. They had a hell of a season,
Right.
I mean, what more can you do?
Yeah, and you can say, well, they didn't play anybody. They played everybody they could play.
Exactly.
That's all you can do.
That whole thing about not playing anybody. I don't care what conference you're in. It's just as hard to play your conference opponents as it is to play anybody else. Personally, I think that, especially in the American, our conference is good, and any given Saturday, anybody can beat each other, and it's good football. We're on national TV more than we ever have been. Our game Thursday night will be on ESPN 7:00. It's and that's even better because it's Boise State, the one that blazed it before us.
You went exactly where I was going to go, and that was something that I was going to say. Boise State. And I'm not sure who the quote's from, but this is maybe 10, 15 years ago, said, we have a tougher time in conference because they know what we do.
Right.
We're not going to surprise anybody that we play once a year and the scouting there and sitting in the stands. We've got a better chance playing against Oklahoma than we have against San Diego State.
Right.
So there's your perfect example. I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah. So this game against Boise State is big for both schools because they have a very similar path. Boise State did it against Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl a few years ago. Then we did it against Baylor. Right. We did it a few more times though, in the Peach Bowl and other bowls. We beat Georgia in the Liberty Bowl one year. So Boise State kind of blazed the path earlier, before UCF, but UCF kind of took the flame and ran with it, after they did. So there's been some talk, obviously, back and forth between fan bases. I love the Boise fan base, by the way. They're good people. They interact with our fan base very well on Twitter, and we've all been saying, let's have this game. Let's have this game. We'd love to do it, so it's not. We don't hate Boise in any way. I don't think. I mean, we're gonna hate them on Thursday night just because you always hate your opponent.
Right.
But after that, I'm sure that like the fans will all still be good with each other and say, hey, the best team won, either way. So,
well, you mentioned something interesting because Boise State has done it with a couple of coaches. I go to the Utah thing when Urban Meyer got to Utah. Urban Meyer goes to Utah, fantastic. Urban Meyer leaves Utah, they're back to whatever they were before. You go from Scott Frost to Heupel, now to Gus Malzahn. Again, none of these coaches are chopped liver, but it's still sustained.
Heupel was, but Heupel kind of was.
I'm not going to get into that.
Heupel screwed it all up. I mean, he screwed it all up. He had 4 plays, literally.
Yeah.
And then everybody figured out the 4 plays. And that was it. He ran a little guy up the middle all the time, threw like 2 or 3 different routes, and that was it. So we went downhill from Scott Frost. So Scott Frost was here, what, two years? Then Heupel comes in. Scott Frost's first year wasn't that good.
3 years.
Was it 3 years? I don't
think so,
remember.
I think.
It's been a long time. Been a long day too. But he had that undefeated season, obviously, but those were still a lot of George O'Leary's players, which is kind of interesting as well. All those guys that were on that team, the first year that Scott Frost came in didn't win a game the year before.
Right.
Because they all quit literally on their coach. They wanted a new coach and they quit. I had players tell me that. They laid down. They weren't going to win any games until he was fired or quit. It happened. They got their way. Scott Frost comes in. Obviously, we were all excited about Scott Frost. Scott Frost's offense that he was in out there at Oregon was insanely fast. It just tore everybody up. First year, it was they were 7-6 with the bowl game. Not great. The next year, 6-7 actually. They lost one more than they won because we lost the bowl game to Arkansas State. Believe it or not, Scott Frost's first year in Orlando, which makes no sense at all.
Yeah,
but
that's fine.
Then that next year, everybody really wanted to play. Played great. It was exciting. All that. Then Scott Frost decides he's going to take off. So, and that's fine. Go home to your alma mater. We all understand that. We were a little upset the way that it all happened, the way that it went down. We were going into overtime in our conference championship game, and we all looked down at our phones. Literally everybody in the stadium got an ESPN alert and looked at their phone, and it told us that Scott Frost was going to Nebraska, which I blame that on ESPN, to be honest with you, because they knew what time it was in our game. Because it was on ESPN. It was on ABC, I think.
Right.
And then he did some things that left a bad taste in our mouths, like wiped all the computers of all the recruiting info and stuff like that. Just did some dirty stuff on the way out. And then he wanted to come back and coach the team in the bowl game.
Right.
Which was interesting as well. I don't know, but
no, it's the timing of things, the way the postseason miasma stuff is set up. There are so many things that can go wrong, and not many things can go right.
Yes,
you're almost punished for doing well because your season's been extended. You do poorly, you can change things around like that, and your players can transfer in and out, and you don't have a problem. If you do well, then you have players that say, well, I'm opting out of the bowl game because it looks like I'm going to play in the NFL. Well, then you're not playing with the same cards that you had all season. Your coaches can move around and assistants and all that.
And that's what happened in our bowl game last year. We played BYU in the Boca Bowl right down here, not far from Orlando in Boca Raton. And our best players weren't playing. As far as defense goes, and they shredded us. They absolutely shredded us. We had guys out there playing on the defense that hadn't played a down all season. Or if they had, we didn't know about it because they were in and out so quick. It's not an excuse, but it's what happened. You know what I'm saying?
It's the reality of the situation, but the reality isn't always Son's excuse. I mean, that is an excuse. That's a reason.
Yeah. So, the point I was getting to, I guess, was that Josh Heupel just, let the whole thing kind of fall apart. He dismissed 4 players that had gun and drug issues on campus in the middle of the season, and 4 of our best defensive players. And still, we did all right last year. It wasn't a total loss, but we had more losses than we'd had in like 3 or 4 years combined in that last year. And they weren't all just, 3-point or 1-point things. They were, a couple of them were kind of whoopings. So we think that we got the better end of the deal when Josh Heupel left and went to Tennessee. We're like, good riddance. See ya, buddy. We'll take somebody else. I don't care who it is at this point. It just happened to be Gus Malzahn. And Gus Malzahn admits that he was tired. He was tired of dealing with the Auburn, not alumni, but what do you call them? Like the boosters and
the
stuff.
Boosters, right?
And they totally ran that program in a weird kind of way, and they still do. He's just not there anymore. But he, even at his introductory press conference, you could just tell that he was re-energized. And he's had that the entire time. He talks about how much he loves it here. He wants to be here for a long time. And I think that he will. He doesn't need to go anywhere else. He's done it. He doesn't need to go back to the Power 5. He didn't need to go somewhere like that and win a team. He needs to build a legacy here. I mean, he can literally build a legacy because coaches have left so fast in our conference. If he just sticks around for a little while, and we're paying him pennies compared to what he was making. He got $26 million to leave Auburn.
Yeah.
He's making like $2 million here, or $3 million, or $6 million. I don't know, something like that. It's
a couple mil in his pocket. Yeah. Well, and correct me if I'm wrong. I'm thinking of his escalation through the coaching ranks. He went from high school offensive coordinator to this guy in a span of a few years.
Yeah.
It's not saying he didn't pay his dues, but his dues were kind of like, oh, and boom, there he is.
Right.
And now he's in the big chair, and perhaps he didn't like being in the big chair, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it just seems like he was really tired of that whole deal. And the very first thing that he said is, look, I am re-energized. I didn't think that I was going to coach at all, but when this job came available, I had my eye on UCF for a really long time. Obviously, we know who they are. They beat us in the bowl game and all that.
Right.
And he admitted that and talked about it, which, took some balls, I think, from him to do that. But he, just said, I'm like a new guy. I'm so excited. I'm excited again. And that was something that he, said that he hadn't been for a while, or at least, alluded to that he wasn't, happy for a while and all that. So I think he's going to come out with his hair on fire. Obviously he's done very well with recruiting so far in this class. In this very short time that he had to put a staff together, he put together an excellent staff. In fact, very interesting. My, position coach in college is actually the defensive back coach at UCF now, which is really odd. David Gibbs, who's been all over the NFL and through the college ranks as well. But people need to remember as well, Gus is the guy that kind of literally wrote the book on the fast offense.
Right.
I think it was called No Huddle or something, and he literally wrote the book on it. So I think UCF's still going to do the same thing, but I think they're going to throw a lot more wrenches into it, and not just have the 4 plays that everybody saw and knew. It's going to be a lot more than that. There's going to be a lot. We have a very senior laden offensive line that have been around for a long time and played together for a while with each other, and I think that obviously that's where it starts. And I'm looking for it to be a good year. I'm not going to say we're going to go undefeated the first year with Gus Malzahn. I don't know if that's going to happen, but there's not too many of the games that I really am worried about. There's maybe a couple of them that I'm kind of concerned with. So,
well, you touched on one thing, and we can go out on this.
Sorry, I'm going all over the place.
Oh, no, not at all, not at all. That's what like we said off there. That's what
I'm kind of known for that. So,
me too. But you mentioned recruiting and some of those kind of things, and for people that don't understand. Again, I'm from Ohio, so you have the big school and a bunch of other schools that they get the leftovers, and then the rest of the Big Ten is kind of the same way. Michigan State, and maybe you go to Central, maybe you go to Northern or Eastern Michigan, maybe you go someplace else. Wisconsin, you're not going to place else. Penn State, maybe go to Pitt, so on and so forth.
Right.
Then you've got all these big schools in Texas. Texas is the big school, but you've got A&M and Rice and Houston and Tech and all that. But when you get to Florida, most people say, well, the setup, Florida State, Miami. And I was talking to someone from FIU just a few days ago, and they said, you don't realize that FIU we're talking about is a bigger school than Miami.
It is, yeah.
And I said, whoa, okay. I mean, I guess I knew that.
They might even be in the top 5 as far as largest schools.
Right. And I think I knew that intellectually, but I didn't really think about how it plays out. So you have, that school in Tampa that you mentioned.
Right.
You have FAU, you have yourself. You have other places that have the resources that some of these now you may not have the boosters, but you have the resources. So what does it take to get over the top and stay there if you're one of these schools, bigger schools with enrollment and whatnot in Florida, as opposed to Miami or the Gators or in Tallahassee?
As far as recruiting?
Yeah, or just in general, but in recruiting too, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think you have to make noise, and it's just what UCF has done is make noise. And if they don't include you in the group, then you have to include yourself in the group. And to include yourself in the group, you have to beat teams that you're not supposed to beat. You have to do things with recruits that you're not supposed to do. We take recruits from Miami all the time now. They're committed in the beginning to Miami, and they wind up on UCF's team. We recruit great in Miami, and it's a hotbed of high school football. Obviously, most of the state of Florida is, just like Ohio is as well. Ohio, Texas,
right.
Those are when I think about high school football, it's Florida, Ohio, and Texas, and that's pretty much, those are the big places. So for recruiting, you just have to get guys that nobody thinks that you're going to get. And Gus, he offered everybody when he came out. He went out and offered 5-star guys, 4-star guys, 3-star guys, no star guys, and cast a huge net and got probably will be, I believe, one of the best recruiting classes ever in UCF history. And we've had some really good ones. We're consistently in the top 50. But I think it's going to be even more than that by the time it's said and done. And then now, especially with the transfer portal, you can do so much with the transfer portal. I think we brought in 12 guys or something. A lot of them from Auburn or other Power 5 schools as well. We got a kid from Notre Dame that was a 5-star when he was recruited. Didn't do too well there, but that's an extremely difficult system to play in out there as a young guy. So, and he's got 3 years left to play here. So I guess that's what you have to do. I mean, we've tried to do it for sure. Just make as much noise as you possibly can.
Well, I think what we're so locked into the present that, for example, Miami. I'm an old guy, and I think I know something about college football. I had never heard of Miami until Howard Snellenberger got there. Never heard of it. Even though that was where Jim Kelly was, I never heard of it. I never heard of Jim Kelly until he got to USFL. Never heard of it. Florida State. Never heard of Florida State until Bobby Bowden got there. Now I'd heard of Florida, Steve Spurrier and whatnot. I'd heard of them. But really that was it. So we fast forward 600 years where we are now, Why can't you be the school that takes over? Why can't you start something where, and with the resources that you have there, why can't you be the place where people say, this is where I want to go?
Yeah. And that's what a lot of the recruits say. They visit all those other places. I mean, the guys that we're getting now, I love to look at the list of offers that they had, like on Rivals, especially. Rivals does a really good job of listing everything. And you see guys that have, you know, all up and down the list, Big Ten, you know, all the Power Five. I hate to use the Power Five.
Whatever those conferences are now.
Autonomous Five or whatever. The ones that aren't the American. They have offers from all those places, and they're starting to want to come here. Some guys really made an impact, you know, just showing what they could do at UCF. And it's even going to get better once the committee decides whether how many teams more that they're going to add in there. Because if kids realize that they can come to UCF and have an actual chance to get there into that championship game and into that, you know, whatever tournament, it doesn't matter where you go. They're going to want to go someplace that has palm trees and swimming pools and a lazy river, you know? So, and we're building a lazy river. So,
and the cherry on top is you can also go play in that no fun league as well if you want to.
Exactly. Yeah. And we've been putting guys there. So I think consistently we had, I think five last year, 5 or 6. And that was one of our biggest classes. And there was guys that, honestly, Jacob Harris, that's playing for the Rams out there in LA right now, and did really well in the first couple preseason games, was one of our higher drafted kids. Didn't even hardly play at UCF.
Right.
He was a tight end / receiver. We talked about him more for not catching the ball than we did for anything else that he did, but he's tearing it up now in the NFL. So, you know, and you see, of course, you know, guys like Shaquille Griffin that came from UCF and what they've done in the NFL and just the story itself of Shaquille Griffin, especially. I think that got a lot of eyes on UCF, just knowing where those guys came from and knowing the story and how it went down. And, you know, so I know that they talk a lot about UCF. There's a lot of guys out there, so I think it's definitely possible. Yeah.
Well, Andrew, I appreciate you taking the time. I know we said half an hour. It's been a little longer than that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, not at all. I'm okay with it. I can do this for 3 hours. It's not a problem for me. But this is great. I appreciate you taking the time. If you would, let people know where they can find you.
Absolutely. KnightlineSports.com. It's the Knightline Sports Network. And you can find our podcast there. We have Knightline. We have Knightline at Night, which is my radio show, but I also put it on there. We have another show that is called the AAC Report, and it's all about the American. It's everything that happens in the American. Then there's another podcast on there that doesn't have anything to do with college sports, really. It's just an overall sports show called Take a Left at Albuquerque. My friend Sam Albuquerque does that show. But you can find us anywhere where you can find podcasts, and UCF or KnightlineSports.com. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time, and have a great night.
You too, man. I appreciate it.